If you've witnessed all the shenanigans that have occurred on social media and YouTube, it should be obvious the things that would lead prosecutors and federal agents to believe the worst about R. Kelly. However, I've maintained my position that I believe it's all smoke and mirrors, mostly by those who have been called out or fired for their indiscretions in the past. And we have just seen this cycle over and over. And I feel these shenanigans we've seen via social media just shed light as to how girls could get close to people within R. Kelly's circle, not necessarily him, how they can fabricate these stories, how all these people can embellish these stories about R. Kelly, and how he could be the one left standing to take the blame for it all. Stay tuned as we continue to break down this indictment. In the last video, we stopped at the methods and means of the enterprise. So let's hit that one more time and just inject a little bit of what we have seen these people display, both on social media and on Surviving R. Kelly, that would lead you to believe these accusations in these indictments are embellishments. According to this, going back to number 9, it says, among the means and methods by which Kelly and his associates participated in the conduct of the affairs of the enterprise were the following. And notice they have Kelly in capital letters. So again, these are things that made it clear to me that R. Kelly would be the one left to answer for all these accusations, while all the people that have been implicated, all the people who would be implied as so-called enablers and enterprise members, get to keep passing the buck amongst each other online. It says, committing, attempting, and aiding and abetting the commission of crimes, conspiring to commit crimes, including but not limited to engaging in sexual activity with girls under 18 years old, engaging in facilitating sexual activity without disclosing a sexually transmitted disease Kelly had contracted, and producing child pornography. That is giving the assumption that he does have an STD, which has not been proven, yes or no, considering those that have accused him have a very active past, and that could be brought up in court. And also to note, they keep mentioning that this whole thing was to target girls under the age of 18, when we've clearly heard so many of these people dispute their own narrative and let it be known that, of course, he's operating within the law. So they had to reconstruct their narratives to criminalize his actions. Going to be demanding absolute commitment to Kelly and not tolerating dissent. Does that sound very criminal? That if you're engaging with a person, let's say you're a sugar daddy and you have a sugar baby, most people in those situationships already have an agreement with each other to be loyal. That's understood. So where is the abuse in demanding loyalty or commitment? Even more so, the person does not have to commit. As these women have said, they are presented with what he wants. They have the option to decline. And most feel like, this is R. Kelly. He can get whatever he wants. But does that constitute abuse? C. Obtaining sensitive information about members and associates of the enterprise to maintain control over them. I believe this is a system in which so many have used to manipulate situations, including him. Let's say You have spread this rumor within his friends and his inner circles and all his employees that this is true about him. So it's okay if we continue to do this, this, and that because he's not going to do anything about it. These are the type of scenarios that we have witnessed displayed online that could easily explain some of the stories we've heard. Recruiting and grooming sexual partners for Kelly. Now, if you listen to a lot of these so called ex employees and former associates, it would appear that most of these people were introducing people to R. Kelly for their own gain. Whether they wanted to step into management, they wanted to boost their own career, whatever you want to say. A lot of these people were introducing people for that reason, not for sexual exploitation. Yet, if that were the case, again, why aren't these people going to be held accountable for allegedly recruiting and facilitating all this illegal sexual activity? The last, isolating women and girls from friends and family and making them dependent on Kelly for their financial well being. So, it's his fault that young girls like to step into the role of being someone's side chick, someone's other girlfriend or flock of girlfriends, harem of girlfriends, however you want to look at it. It's his fault that they don't want to go out and pursue their own careers. They say that he was preventing them from contacting family when there's clearly evidence all over social media that would dispute that, considering how can they say they were messaging each other and so-called associates and employees for this and that, but they couldn't call 911 or their family and friends. It's kind of contradicting. But nonetheless, it's so much that we have seen that would break apart everything that they have laid out in this indictment. Yet so many have been gung-ho on getting on platforms and trying to steer the direction of the narrative to make it appear what is listed in this indictment makes it overwhelmingly, abundantly clear that he's guilty, when in fact it makes it clear that more of these people around him could have been participating in specific things. They got caught up in specific things, and now we're pointing the finger at R. Kelly. Count one, racketeering. That is why I said just what I just said. Because if you go down the history in which I have displayed on YouTube, you will notice that there's a pattern of people dealing with taking his product, which is his music, and bootlegging it. You have people, all these shell companies in his name. You have a lot of fraudulent activity, GoFundMe accounts, a lot of things going on in this man's name. Not to mention that nobody is being attentive to his IRS debt. And it seems if you go throughout his whole career, that is a common occurrence. So as I suspected, I feel like a lot of the shady business is what brought this racketeering in motion. Considering I also stumbled across other documents and lawsuits in which people have accused people in this circle of racketeering type activities. Yet these people have never been called to be accountable for what they did. Moving on, it says the allegations contained in paragraphs 1 through 10 are realleged and incorporated as if fully set forth in this paragraph. In or about and between January 1999 and the present, both days being approximate and inclusive, within the Eastern District of New York and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, together with others, being a person employed by and associated with the enterprise, an enterprise that engaged in and the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce did knowingly and intentionally conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity as defined in Title 18, United States Code, Section 196 and 196 parentheses 5, consisting of the racketeering acts set forth below. So, from that key point, I just want you to lodge in your mind January 1999. This is where they're going to start. And if you recall, a lot of people came and told us that they were employed with R. Kelly during this time frame. A lot of people wanted to come out and advocate for R. Kelly. However, they eventually just showed us yet again the type of activity that would allow people with ill intent to surround themselves around R. Kelly and fabricate these type of stories. As alleged, sexual exploitation of a child, Jane Doe number 1. This allegedly occurred in or about May 1999 or October 1999. So that is a few months span in which they're saying this alleged activity occurred with this alleged Jane Doe. Together with others, did knowingly and intentionally employ, use, persuade, induce, entice, and coerce a minor, to wit, Jane Doe number 1, an individual whose identity is known to the grand jury, to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing one or more visual depictions of such conduct, which visual depictions were produced using materials that had been mailed, shipped, and transported in interstate and foreign commerce. Now, if you listen to what that just described, you will clearly hear them describing these people allegedly transporting this so-called tape, in which other individuals have came out and publicly said they stole, they gave to this person did this, and that. Okay? So, as I asked a long time ago, when it comes to individuals like Chuck and Keith, who Lisa Van Allen implicated, why aren't these people being criminally prosecuted? Or did they cut them a deal? Jane Doe number 2. In or about and between 2003 and 2004, both dates being approximate and inclusive, within the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere, the defendant Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally secretly confide an individual with Jane Doe number 2, an individual whose identity is known to the grand jury, against her will, and induced Jane Doe number 2 by deceit and enticement to go from one place to another with intent secretly to confine her against her will. Now, let me tell you something about kidnapping. Let's say you're in your house and you're having a domestic dispute, and you as a woman are into it with the guy. The guy forces you from one room to another, locks the door. Technically, by law, that is kidnapping. Now, the problem I have with that is when you listen to all these stories from all these alleged victims, none of these people have been locked in nothing. They had free will to come and go, as many of them describe leaving. No threat to their life, none of that. So to sit here and listen, or to read the description that they're making this again a criminal act and saying that this person forced this girl to do this and do that. So by saying it in those words, that is now kidnapping. Okay? Point 15. The defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, committed the following acts, either one of which alone constitutes racketeering. Act 3. Transportation. Now, we all know that R. Kelly was not driving. He was not transporting none of these people. Yet, we heard people come on social media and say, we got this, we got this, we got bus drivers. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But anywho, it says, in or about or between 2003 and 2004, both dates being approximate and inclusive, within the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally transport an individual, to wit, Jane Doe number 2, in interstate commerce with intent that such individual engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with the criminal offense, to wit, violates of Illinois Criminal Code Section 512 through 16. Coercion and enticement. In or about and between 2003 and 2004, both dates being approximate and inclusive within the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally persuade, induce, entice, and coerce an individual, to wit Jane Doe 2, to travel in interstate commerce, to engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with the criminal offense, to wit violations of Illinois Criminal Code Sections 512, 16 AB. So racketeering, Act 4. Mann Act, Jane Doe number 3. In or about and between May 2009 and January 2010, both dates being approximate and inclusive within the Northern District of Illinois and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally persuade, induce, entice, and coerce an individual who had not attained the age of 18 years, to wit, Jane Doe number 3, an individual whose identity is known to the grand jury, to engage in sexual activity for which can be charged with the criminal offense. Now, we already done beat the dead horse in how this individual lied about her age, had a fraudulent ID, has a charge of obtaining fraudulent documents on her record. So she has this history of not very credible behavior, and yet these are the type of people that feel this indictment. Now, I could just sit here and go through each and every one of them and point out each and every one of the flaws, but time is slipping away. So we have to just bypass a lot and just skip through the meat and potatoes. So moving on. Forced labor. In or about and between May 2009 and January 10. And that's another issue with all these indictments. You never have exact dates on anything. You have this in or about, and then they have this long gaping time span. So that just gives reason to question. I wonder what the defense has to counteract as far as R. Kelly's possible alibi, when a lot of these allegations are during a lot of appearances and concerts that R. Kelly was having. So common sense would be that maybe they left out approximate or the real dates, because they know that if they had put it out there, it would be very obvious to people like me who could just go and check those dates to nip that in the bud. But anyways, according to them, they're saying the same individual between those dates and together with others, they did intentionally obtain the labor and services of a person. What labor? What services? She was hired? That would just leave questions. Questions, questions. As many of these people, as I have said, often found themselves in positions they weren't qualified for. So, what if people were giving these little positions? They were put on payroll, and these are the individuals that have also been used to set these smoke screens. Just a thought. But, anyways, if that person did not perform such labor and services, such person would suffer serious harm and physical restraint and a combination of such means in violation of the Title 18 U.S. codes. So according to this allegation, they were forced to work, and if they didn't work, they were put under distress, which is against the law, forced labor. Sexual exploitation of a child. Same individual, same dates. R. Kelly, or Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally employ, use, persuade, induce, entice, and coerce a minor, to wit Jane Doe number 3, to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing one or more visual depictions of such conduct. However, when they get finished with all that, they don't have in their discovery any evidence of any alleged video depiction of Jane Doe number 3. So this sexual exploitation of a child is up in the air. Moving on. Mann Act, Jane Doe number 4. The defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, committed the following acts, and any of which alone constitutes racketeering. Act 7. So they have a list of things they're accusing of R. Kelly. When you go down the list that I'm going to tell you about, you will notice that obviously this list applies to other individuals who are not in the indictment. The indictment only is talking about Robert Sylvester Kelly as the head chief in control of all these people, facilitating all these things on his behalf. So it should be no question as to why people take offense when individuals keep volunteering janky information saying they're in contact with this man, or they're in contact with people who's in his so-called inner circle, when it all comes out, the information they provide is fraudulent. And the people they rely on give more credit to the accusations in this indictment, which would leave you to wonder if they have been a part of the people spreading the propaganda that gave them these impressions that they're now trying to backtrack from. According to this, when it comes to Jane Doe number 4, in or about July 2015, within the District of Connecticut, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally transport an individual, to wit Jane Doe number 4, an individual whose identity is known to the grand jury in interstate commerce, with intent that such individual engage in sexual activity. And it's interesting that they say that, because this alleged Jane Doe's narrative definitely does not mention a flight or appearance of them and R. Kelly in July 2015. In fact, they volunteered this janky ass notebook piece of paper with September 2015. So, anyways, let's move on. Coercion and enticement. In or about July 2015, within the District of Connecticut, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally persuade, entice, and coerce an individual. Now, clearly, this seems to be a story which would stem from Asante McGee. But the problem is when the alleged Jane Doe calls out the person telling the story about her, who can take serious these allegations set forth in this indictment? Moving on, we're just gonna move on to the next one. Racketeering Act 8. Same Jane Doe. So a different time period is October 2015. Still months prior to the October. No, I'm sorry. This is saying in or about October. So they wrote the letter in September. So that would come into play as to what's going on now, but would not explain the July trip previously mentioned. Now, according to what they've said, Robert Sylvester Kelly, along with others, did coerce Jane Doe number 4 to transport herself from state to state, engage in sexual activities, and basically engage in illegal sexual activity. The last Jane Doe, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, the last Jane Doe. I just had to skip ahead just to see where I am on time. But the last Jane Doe was Jane Doe number 5, in which they're saying racketeering act, forced labor, on or about January 13, 2018. Wait a minute. On or about January 13, 2018, within the Central District of California and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally obtain the labor and services of a person, to wit, Jane Doe number 5, by means of force. I could have sworn Jane Doe number 5 said she met R. Kelly at a concert. So what kind of forced labor was he forcing her to do? Did he forced her to sit in the van for 8 hours? What labor was she doing in the van? What was she doing then? I'm confused. Again, that would give more precedence to how do we know she just wasn't another employee? Same individual, they're saying Mann Act. And they're including transportation, coercion, enticement, the same things aforementioned previously, only with Jane Doe number 5, the same individual with the STD claim. On or about May 18, 2017, within the Eastern District of New York and elsewhere, the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, together with others, did knowingly and intentionally transport an individual, to wit, Jane Doe number 5, an individual whose identity is known to grand jury, in interstate commerce with intent that such individual engage in sexual activity for which a person can be charged with a criminal offense. So that sounds like this person did something in which they could be charged with the criminal offense. However, just like everything else, we're going to cast this onto R. Kelly. I'm pretty sure you get the gist of how this indictment has been laid out, and how even though all these people keep referring to it as though it is the nail in the coffin for R. Kelly, it's clear to those of us paying attention what really is going on, especially when you dig into these Jane Does, these so called employees and enterprise members, and you recognize that these people have a big motivating factor into telling all these lies. The question is, are they going to get away with it? Stay tuned.